Well, I think it's cool. Thank you. As I said, I wish I'd made that, but that's what it's all about. That is why we get up in the morning. And personally speaking, I'd rather be doing that than, well, just about anything really. That is it. So having kind of got this desire to become a filmmaker, becoming this athlete who goes off and skis, scuba dives, and rides motorbikes, not really, my mother won't let me, but something like that is essentially what I aspire to do. So I went out and started doing it. And weirdly now, I mainly do triathlons and ultramarathons and, well, those are the two main things, triathlons and ultramarathons, is pretty much what I end up doing. But I also do mountain biking, and again, you know, I'll be touching on Cape Epic a bit later on, but this kind of aspiration to be outdoors and to do these wonderful things has taken me literally all around the world, from South Africa to being chased by zombies, only across 5 kilometres, but it's the most fun I've had doing 5 kilometres ever. Of course, everybody has to do an Ironman, so I thought I'd do one of those. In fact, I ended up doing 4 in one summer because I'm a sucker for punishment, because the magazine said, "Are you free next weekend?" And I said yes. So I'd end up going off and doing little adventures. I then was asked to be doing slacklining, and this is the Jungle Ultra, which I'll come to talk about, in Peru, I'm sorry. And one of the first races I did actually was something called the Transalpine Run. The Transalpine Run is amazing. I'm not going to go into it in great detail here in this talk, but it's an 8-day, 320-kilometre race across the Alps. Each year it changes in direction, but the year I did it started in Germany. You run across the whole of Austria, and you finish in the Dolomites. Pretty cool. And it's hard, and you climb Everest twice during the course of a week. And you get to go up these mountains, and you don't even get to look behind. Luckily, there's a photographer there to capture him as he goes behind. That's me, not him, me. And you get to the top, and then you run back down it again, and on to the next country, pretty much, it feels like. I also like doing, weirdly, kind of muddy obstacle races, mud runs, whatever you want to call them. This is something called the Hell Runner, which I've done strangely 5 times. That thing there is called the Bogs of Doom. The great thing about these races is that it actually gets people who are genuinely novice athletes. And most of those people who do these kind of races go to the gym. I don't go to the gym. I'm not a member of one, I should tell you this now. I'd like to be, but I'm not. And I'll come on to the reason why not later on. I've also dabbled a bit in the art of canoeing. This race is the oldest and longest single-stage canoe race in the world. It's called the Devizes to Westminster, and it's 200 kilometres long, and you do it in one go, and it hurts a lot. In fact, it's one of the hardest things I've ever done, and you do it in a 2-man paddle. There was a bloke behind me, one of my best mates, who I never saw pretty much throughout the entire 24 hours we were canoeing, because, of course, he is behind me, and I felt like he wasn't actually doing any work at all. And then there's little things like the Marathon du Médoc. This is the coolest race ever. It's a gastro marathon. It's in Bordeaux, and you drink. You Italians must love this. You drink your way around a marathon. Every kilometre, or 2 kilometres roughly, you have a wine stop, and you get to sample the best wines out there, from the Margaux to the Saint-Emilion, whatever you can think of. And that's my girlfriend, who I did it with, and it's the only race we've ever run together, because we figured alcohol might allow us to stay friends. So we made a pact during each of the stops, and there were 20 wine stations that we would actually have a drink. Clearly we're not downing a bottle of wine, but we probably got through the best part of a bottle during the course of a marathon. And again, doing more muddy, crazy little things. I seem to be always caked in some form of mud in most of the races I do. But occasionally I get asked to go and do kind of slightly more glamorous and one thing. This is a race called the Etape de la Vuelta. It was the first, and it happened last year, it was the first etape, like the Etape du Tour that happens around the Tour de France, but this one was around the Vuelta, which is the famous Spanish race. So that was pretty nails. That involved 5,000 metres of climbing, 3 Cat 1 climbs, which if you know anything about cycling, I didn't really know what a Cat 1 looked like before I went up one. But it's very steep and very long, and it hurts a lot. And so yeah, so all these races have basically led to me to collect a kind of, I suppose, just a great big bunch of stories, which is what I tell people. So again, going back to what I do, the main thing that people know me for is taking on mad challenges. And I'm all about trying to inspire people to go and do these sort of things as well. I don't really talk about how you do them, how you train for them. I'm more about just go and do it. Be inspired, go and do it, because you can do all these things. Because the weird thing is, all of these I've done in the space of about 3 years. And as you'll see in a minute, in a few minutes, you know, this is a pretty new hobby to me. So obviously one of the main challenges that you have in the fitness industry, of course, is what happens, well, essentially, everybody, I'll come on to it in a minute, but basically what happens during the summer is a lot of people want to be outside. In the winter though, you know, it's pretty grim. On a day like this, it doesn't really inspire me to want to go running, although I brought my running shoes, and after this I will go for a run. I have luckily a rain mat. But it makes you just hard for the summer. People get something called seasonal affective disorder, SAD as it's called in the United Kingdom, which basically means that you become miserable during the winter, and all you can think about is the summer and the heat. So we start to kind of, you know, get a bit depressed. So that's why a lot of people at that time go and join a gym if they want to be fit, because of course, you know, it's indoors, it's warm. But people like me go, wicked, actually, rain is good. I embrace it. In fact, that's not me, that's Dean Canazes, who is an amazing ultra runner in the US. And he's kind of like a really big version of me, basically. And he does some pretty cool things, and he's known for being hard as nails. He's very tough. The big challenge is, you know, if you go to a gym and you're a runner or an athlete of any description, whether you're a triathlete or a runner or a swimmer or whatever it might be, I mean, you're faced with these exercise machines. A lot of people get a bit distressed by it. You know, you're treading on a treadmill and it's sunny outdoors. Well, you don't really want to be doing that. You'd rather be, you know, running in the Dolomites. Much nicer if you're going to, you know, have a view to look at. So, I want to try during this talk to kind of see how I can create some sort of synergy between the outdoor world, that, which I love doing, and the world indoors. And you'll see a few ideas later on. But to give you an idea of where this all began, I thought I'll take you back approximately 14 years to a point when I wasn't an athlete at all. In fact, the closest thing I got to sport was running for a bus. And in those days, I was called Champagne Tobes. Weirdly, I wasn't some weird quaffing champagne dude, but I did like my champagne. And it had an effect. I started to pound the pounds. And at this stage, I was doing strangely, my second university degree. And unfortunately, even though I had a history of sport, of going to gyms and doing lots of sports when I was at school, I went to a place called Millfield, which is one of the best sporting academies in the world. It's produced 57 Olympians in the past 75 years, which ain't bad for a new school. But unfortunately, even though I was dreaming and thinking I was still sporting, hey, I could go skiing, and I thought I could eat cheese plates, like that thing in the middle there, and I thought it'd be okay to drink and hang out with girls. But actually, I was kidding myself, and I realised that something would have to change. But it was for several years that I continued to eat my way through things. This was in Chile when I was a student. I went and did a 6-month stage in Chile, and I'd recently broken up with a girlfriend, and I decided the best recourse for that was to eat a lot of weird profiteroles. But then I had an epiphany, and I realised when I finished university for the second time, now at 25 years old, that something needed to change. I needed to break out of this kind of weird existence in which I essentially thought I was sporty, thought I was fit, but I wasn't. So I did what every self-respecting man would do, and I joined the army. At this stage now, if you were trying to join the army at 25, you'd almost be too late. At the time, it was a cut-off at 29 years old. And that guy on the left, he was my best friend. I used to live with him, and I think I started to emulate him somewhat. He's a big chap. He weighs about 120 kilos. He goes to the gym, you would never know it. So I did this crash course, Sandhurst, the Royal Military Academy Sandhurst. It's the where all officers go to train in the UK. So in the first 5 weeks, you're treated like, well, mud, basically. You're pond life. You are the lowest piece of dirt on anyone's shoe, and they break you down and rebuild you. And during that time, I managed to lose 5 kilograms, which is pretty good in 5 weeks. And so I started to get thinner and fitter, and I felt really good. And I started to think, this is the way forward. This is what it's all about. They would beast us. They would take us on all these marches, and I just felt the fat falling off me. Not really much to do with normal day life, this, of course. At this point now, we're doing a race, and we're running. We've got around about, I don't know, about 10 kilograms on our body in terms of around our waist and our weapons. And it's all about teamwork, it's about camaraderie. And that's really the first time I started to get this feeling that actually this is not about doing things on your own necessarily, it's about doing things together. And it's this stage now I started to learn about leadership, and I started to learn about management. And throughout this whole year of basically doing press-ups, I spent most of the year at some point on my hands and knees, or just on my feet and hands, I should say, in all conditions. And I think this mindset that the army gave me of there is no summer, every day's a Saturday, and we can work in anything, and it's really just a case of what's up here. So eventually, after 44 weeks, almost a year, I passed out. That's me in the middle, and that's, you know, the same thing that old Prince Harry and Prince William did. They realised too that in order to become a real man, you need to join the army. But for me, joining the army was a bit like, well, I don't think you know this. It's a TV series in the United Kingdom called Faking It. But essentially, I had joined the army to get fit, but I didn't realise I'd be signing up for 4 years. And so therefore, and I couldn't leave, so I thought I might as well start, you know, to enjoy myself. So as soon as you finish Sandhurst, you become a second lieutenant, and suddenly you're going to lots of parties, and you dress up all the time in strange outfits. And the army is very much a drinking culture, and it's very interesting, but basically your respect, how you gain respect from your soldiers is based on your ability to drink, and your ability to be fit. And as an officer, as a leader of men, you need to be fitter than all your men and better at drinking than they are. Which basically means that I spent a lot of my time sort of falling over somewhat, trying to minesweep, or in better English, or I don't know how to say that in Italian really, but basically you find any booze and you just drink it. Because you were seen, you had to be the last man to get fed, you had to be, but also not look drunk too much. I was obviously doing a bad job there. Then, of course, you end up getting sent off to places like Iraq. And when you go to any theatre of war, you're not allowed to drink at all. So that's a really good way. It makes me sound like an alcoholic. I'm not. It's just there's a culture of it in any form of military organisation. And it's trying to break through of that. And actually, the booze that we'll come on to later is one of the reasons why people find it really difficult to essentially get up in the morning, of course. So yeah, in 2007, I went off to Iraq, and I spent 6 months there. I came back, I did another bits and bobs back in the UK, and then I went out again for another 3 months. So I spent almost the best part of a year in the space of a year in that wonderful country. And it taught me quite a few things. And it made me want to leave the army, strangely, because I realised that if I was going to be able to plan, be able to really get fit, then I needed to be out of the army because it was too sporadic. It was impossible to actually plan anything in my life. So now I ended up becoming this is what I've ended up doing. I ended up essentially always halfway through some murky bog, and it's really cold. It's really, really, really cold. And it starts making you think, why am I doing this? What is the point of all this? I googled that. I hope it actually means something polite rather than something really dodgy in Italian. So when I was leaving the army and starting this whole new life as an adventure filmmaking journalist, by the way, that's a title completely made up. It doesn't really exist. You won't find it in your career guide when you're at school thinking, I'm going to become an adventure filmmaker and journalist and athlete. It doesn't really exist. So I started to think about, well, what can I do? Where do I want to be in the world? And at the time, this video wasn't there, but this represents essentially the sort of thing I like. And I played golf at that time. And it's near here, this is the Italian